elections are very dishonest, very corrupt, and we have to straighten it out. And it's so easy to do it. And we should go to paper ballots. We should go to one-day voting. We should go to voter ID. And just one other thing, proof of a thing called citizenship in the United States. Wouldn't that be nice? How simple does that sound? Proof of citizenship, voter ID, one-day voting, and paper ballots. You know, paper ballots are very secure. They have watermark paper. It's very intricate stuff. It's very technologically advanced, even though it's paper. And you'd have no trouble. You wouldn't have dishonest elections, and you'd have them all done by 10 o'clock in the evening. You know, France went to that, and not that I want to copy anybody, but many others have also, and they had 38 million votes, and it was all done at 10 o'clock. They had a winner, they had a loser, that was it. Nobody was complaining. And they had it backed up with paper. And it's so easy to do. The other thing, you'd save about, this would cost you about 8% of what the machines cost. So the paper would be much less expensive. So if you're looking to save some money, that's a good way to save it.
So excited for them to be joining us from Baton Rouge. Christy is the Louisiana Republican Assembly president, and she is I'm trying to give not the acronyms, but it's a lot of words. Republican State Central Committee woman and Republican Parish, thank you, Executive Committee. She's on there as well. And earlier this year, Christy introduced a resolution at the Republican State Central Committee that was passed by the grace of God and by a lot of healthy pressure from people in this room and all over the state. And it's hard to believe that was only February. I thought it was last year.
It was actually the end of June.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But the resolution recommends that paper ballots are used in all Louisiana elections. And this is important because the Republican State Central Committee is the policy-making body for the Republican Party. So that is a really great, strong step in the right direction. And Christy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Danielle, so much for the introduction. Thank you, everybody. It's so nice to see so many people here. And it's such an honor to be at the We the People Bayou chapter organization and to be able to speak in front of you this evening because you are such a dynamic organization. You're this phenomenal grassroots organization who's not just talking the talk, but you're walking the walk. And I'm so impressed with the things that you've done here to spread the truth to your local community. And I think that is what we all as grassroots organizations have in common, is that we are bound by our common faith in the good Lord, right? And I think that He has shown us the truth. We all obviously possess a certain level of discernment to know what that truth is, what His truth is, which is the only truth. And so He's chosen to give us the truth, but we're tasked to deliver it, right? And so all of these grassroots organizations, LRA, you guys, the ones that work on health freedom, the ones that work on education, you know, it's all the message after the 2020 selection that we were charged with delivering the truth about each different subject. And all of these things came to us just like under cover of darkness. We one day sort of woke up and said, you know, we've been lied to. We have been lied to. And so I think that it's important to go back a little bit and see, how did this happen? How did this begin? And how it really began was elections, right? I was a flight attendant for 25 years. I flew internationally for American Airlines, and I also lived for 20 of those years in Germany. So I think that I gained a very unique perspective on America, sort of a global perspective looking back at America and realizing that the freedoms that we enjoy in this country are not found in any other. Not one other, no other. And there's a reason for that. Some of you in this room can attest to the fact that the military, our soldiers, fought and died to assure that we maintain these freedoms. And we're so grateful to you who served and to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So my dad was a Francophile. I think it's important to insert this little tidbit in at this point. He loved France, and he spoke fluent French. And before he passed away, his whole adult life, he would go to France several times a year. One day, he happened to have the great good fortune of being in the Normandy cemetery, right, where all of our troops are, their graves are. And he overheard in French, one of the Frenchmen, an old Frenchman, who was obviously with his grandson. He had his arm around his grandson, and he said, "Never forget what the Amis did for us." The Amis being the Americans. And so my dad brought that home, and it's true. The French need to remember that today when they're complaining about America and the tariffs and all of the things, because if it weren't for America, they'd be wearing brown shirts and saluting Heil Hitler, right? So fast forward to the fraudulent election of 2020. We really started waking up at that point, I think, because the tyranny became very real. We saw it in all facets of our lives, especially mandates. We realized that we were losing ground because someone who was actually not elected, had been selected, was controlling, or maybe he was controlling, we know that now, was controlling everything that we were doing. That we, taking the freedoms away inch by inch, piece by piece. And so it all goes back to the elections. We had the 2024 election, and Trump won. Do we think that they didn't cheat? Of course they cheated. But there were many things in place, not to mention the overwhelming numbers of people who voted for Trump. It overwhelmed the cheating algorithms. But there were also, and I'll give you 3 examples of things that happened. The first one is people like you and me on the ground in all the states. They had volunteered as poll commissioners and elections workers, and so they were eyes and ears on the ground, as well as Trump deployed 500 attorneys to the swing states and everywhere else. They were watching and ready. And something quite interesting, 15 million Democrats who voted in 2020 did not vote in 2024. What? What happened? Where did all those Democrats go? Anybody know? Anybody want to hazard a guess? There was no pandemic. So 15 million ballots were not received that had been received in the 2020 selection. So we know that the ironclad Congress that Trump expected to have didn't happen initially because in a deeply red state such as Louisiana, do we think, hi Juliet, do we think that they were not cheating? They absolutely were. They stole, in certain states, the down ballot races. Did that happen in Louisiana? Well, I don't know, but I will say that let's go back to 2020, let's go back to November a year ago, when there was the race for Secretary of State. You guys remember that? Well, there was a certain precinct in Lafayette Parish where 7 people voted for Brandon Trosclair for Secretary of State. In that precinct, Brandon Trosclair was given 5 votes. 7 people voted for him for sure. He was given 5 votes. That means that at least 2 votes were canceled, didn't count. That's a civil rights situation. These 7 people came to our group, Louisiana Citizens for Election Integrity, and gave us signed affidavits stating that they had voted for Brandon Trosclair. We brought those affidavits to the Attorney General's office, put them on our desk, and as far as we know, they're still sitting there because nothing was done. So then we have the 2024 election where our wonderful friend, Senator Albert Guillory, ran against the gerrymandered district against Cleo Fields, the Democrat, who, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to give any adjectives with him, but describing him. There were people in deeply red precincts who voted for Donald Trump because he won in these particular precincts. And then they obviously went down ballot and voted for the Democrat, Cleo Fields, because in some of these districts, our friend, Senator Albert Guillory, got 0 or 1 vote. That's implausible in those red precincts. So, we know that they're hard at work in this state, right? They can't flip it overnight. So for years and years, they've taken percentages away from our Republican candidates who win, and they eventually flip it purple, flip it blue, and then everyone says, well, you know, we saw it coming because our Republican candidates were losing percentages over the years. No, they were being stolen. So what do we do? Well, I'm going to mention something that happened. We were working with our Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State, Kyle Ardoin, for some time. We're actually the group that brought him the information on ERIC. If you guys don't know what ERIC is, it's a voter roll cleaning, I'm sure most of you do, you're all shaking your heads, voter roll cleaning system that ostensibly cleans the names off the voter rolls, but actually uses them to cheat. It's a George Soros-funded entity, okay? 32 states were at the time contracted, this is 2022, contracted with ERIC. Louisiana was one. We found out the information about it being Soros-funded, etc., and we brought that information to Kyle Ardoin, the current, at that time, Secretary of State. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to do my own due diligence, and if this is true, I'm gonna have to sever ties with ERIC. And so he did do his own due diligence, and he severed ties with ERIC. He was the first SOS to do so. Louisiana was first in something good. So we had the idea that Kyle Ardoin was going to continue to work with us. So much so that for the LA GOP convention, where the theme, this is 2 years ago, was election integrity, Kyle Ardoin was the opening speech. Kyle Ardoin did not know the people that Lenore and I had invited to come and speak, the election integrity experts, the cyber data analysts, the national figures, who came at our behest to speak at the LA GOP convention. By the way, that was the most popular convention the LA GOP has ever had because it was based on election integrity. That, to me, was a referendum on the concern that the citizens of Louisiana have about our elections. So Kyle didn't know these people. He didn't know Dr. Douglas Frank. He didn't know Professor David Clements. He didn't know these people. So I said, Kyle, you're opening up the LAGO convention, and you better say something to have the optics of you having invited these people. Otherwise, you're going to look kind of silly. So I ended up writing his opening speech for him that he delivered because he didn't know. So fast forward to post LAGOP convention that year. What has happened with our elections? We had such great interest and everybody knew the information. Nothing. Nothing has happened with our elections. In fact, our Secretary of State, current, Nancy Landry, has just finished the first part of issuing an RFP for voting machines. You just saw a video with our governor standing next to President Trump as President Trump, again, the second time in as many months, said within 2 feet of Jeff Landry that he wants paper ballots, no machines. Second time. Yet, Jeff Landry, after both times, has gotten on interviews, has had written interviews, has had, video interviews whereby he says, we're going to get and I can't do a good Cajun accent, so I'm not going to try, but we're going to get a paper receipt. He's equating a paper receipt that's issued from a voting machine. He calls it a grocery receipt. We're going to get that good grocery receipt, and you're going to be able to know how you voted. Now, the problem is, the grocery receipt is issued from a machine. So he's missing the complete point. Not only that, but when you get a grocery receipt for the groceries you purchased, you typically have the groceries in your bag, right? So if you buy milk and the milk is not in your bag, you can do the audit yourself of your groceries. I paid for this, but I don't have this. When you get a receipt from the machine of your vote, you don't know if that's true, because the minute you walk away with that vote, with that receipt, the machine could have flipped your vote any way it wanted to. You don't know if your vote counted at all, and you definitely don't know if your vote counted for who you intended it to. So Jeff Landry needs a big wake-up call. Randy's going to talk a little bit more about what that could potentially be. But we need to demand free and fair elections. It's elections. This is our state. We the people decide what happens in it. Our voices have not been heard for too long now, which is how we got in this predicament. So we are going to have to really spread the word, tell everyone, and we have some things that you can do as well. What we've done is we've organized a lot of the grassroots organizations that formed after 2020. We've mobilized them, and we are going to be, the main thing right now is to stop the RFP, right? There are many reasons why that might happen organically, but we're going to not stop fighting to do it. So one of the things that we have done is we've organized you guys, Bayou, We the People, are part of this initiative, whether you know it or not. I don't know if it's been announced. But we have a newspaper that we did, much like the one that we did for Kyle Ardoin, that said, hey, Kyle, clean the voter rolls. Well, that went over with him like a ton of bricks in a good way for us. Okay, it scared him. It was probably much of the reason why he dropped out of the race for re-election, among other things. Among the fact that he couldn't debate the truth of what we knew that he knew. Because in my dining room on June 26th of 2022, Kyle Ardoin sat with Dr. Douglas Frank for 6 hours while Dr. Frank schooled him on the election fraud in our country, and specifically in Louisiana, because we had put him on retainer to do the deep dive into our elections. So after the 6 hours, Dr. Frank asked for Kyle's permission to have a white hat hacker, a good guy, attempt to hack into our election management system in Louisiana in real time. Permission was granted, and the hacker was successful in 3 minutes. If you haven't heard that story, it's shocking. I mean, I've been telling this story since that happened. After that, Kyle went on a campaign trail, saying that all the swing states had problems, but not in Louisiana, even though we have the same machines as they. That's like saying the F-150's been recalled by Ford, but our F-150s in Louisiana are just fine. I mean, nobody's buying that. So, we have, we've got this newspaper, I've alluded to that. It's going to, this time, call out Nancy Landry. Nancy Landry, why don't you align with President Trump, Elon Musk, the RNC, the LA GOP? Danielle talked about the resolution that I brought before the RSCC, the governing body of the LA GOP. It's a paper ballot resolution. It passed. It passed by 2 votes, but it passed. So, about paper ballots, that we want paper ballots. We voted on paper ballots. And the funniest part about that, Randy, is one of the, who was it? I can't remember who it was. It was a state rep. She was sitting in the front row. She said, she's the one who stood up and really was upset about the resolution and paper ballots. And really talked against paper ballots. Ironically enough, she's the one who made the motion to vote on paper ballots. What? So that's really pretty crazy. But the reason that we're in a situation with Nancy Landry is because she doesn't understand that she's not aligned with President Trump, Elon Musk, or if she does, it's willful ignorance. I don't know, but I want to read you a quote from Elon Musk. One of the smartest men in any room. And he said, I am a technologist. I know a lot about computers. What are voting machines? They're computers, and we need to start calling them such, right? And I'm like, the last thing I would do is trust a computer program because it's just too easy to hack. Close quote. What does Nancy Landry know that Elon Musk does not? That's a valid question. Yeah, so that's really the scenario now. There are many things that, as I said, could be happening organically that could interrupt this whole thing. She's got to go to the legislature and get she's got 60 million, she needs over 100 million to get these new machines. That's a problem, but the legislature tends to look at her as the elections expert. But in our our Constitution, the American Constitution, it states that the states' legislative bodies control elections and make the decisions regarding elections, and that the Secretary of State is the administrator of those decisions. But our legislature here has gotten that sort of twisted. You know, we brought a Made in America Voting Act about a year ago, Randy, was it, that we wrote about if we're going to have machines, like we're not in favor of machines, but it was like a preemptive strike. If we're going to have machines, we want a machine that has all Made in America parts. We know for a fact that that doesn't exist because there are 3 vending companies in the United States, not one will disclose their ownership, and all of the parts from all of those voting machines are made in China. Randy's going to talk about why that might be a good thing if you don't want voting machines. So anyway, I'm going to just close in saying that I appreciate all of you for your search for the truth. I appreciate that you're here. I'm so grateful that we have people like you in this state because you're amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
That was a fantastic snapshot on what I know has been a long journey. So thank you for all the work that you have done and your fearless partner, and I wouldn't say in crime, but I don't know another way to say it, in anti-crime, Dr.
I left my tape at home.
Dr. Randy Russ, thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. It's great to be back with you, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow patriots. We've come a long way since we started this journey over 4 years ago now. And because of your work over those years and people throughout the state and the country, we are winning. And we saw evidence of that in the President's comments, which was the announcement of the Hyundai steel plant for Ascension Parish. Do you think his remarks at the end were by accident? I can assure you that he is aware of what's going on in Louisiana, in particular the RFP and the fact that the state, the governor, and the Secretary of State and many in the legislature support machines. And you saw him look to his side, to Jeff Landry, and say, you know you could save a lot of money. That was not by accident. The good news is there's a new sheriff in town, and they are very receptive to us. And the contacts that many of us have worked on these many years are now bearing fruit. For 4 years, we were frustrated with those other guys, and they wouldn't listen to us. And the rhinos in this state still are not listening to us. And you saw our governor's reaction to the president. The president has told him once with 50 other governors what his policy is. And he said, I sure hope Republican governors will help bring this to pass. He then finished. That was not an answer to the reporter's question, by the way. The reporter asked about something else, and he went right in to elections that was targeted for Louisiana. Make no mistake about it. So there are 3 things that I want to share with you that's going on at the national level. And before I do that, I want to say, in Louisiana, the constitutional challenge that we raised last year in the 19th Judicial Court in Baton Rouge is still alive. That, simply put, is a challenge by citizens that our current machine-based system is unconstitutional. They've dragged us out, they've lawfared us, we're still at it. And so that is still a live lawsuit to get our current system declared unconstitutional. Secondly, we sued the Secretary of State 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, to clean up the voter rolls. Thanks to, remember the canvass we did in Terrebonne? We did one in Ascension, and we had national experts analyze our entire voter roll. That was thrown out in state court because of lack of standing. Citizens don't have standing to challenge the voter rolls. Really? The Department of Justice is forming as we speak. Did Harmeet get approved today? Does anybody know if Harmeet Dillon got confirmed today? She was supposed to get confirmed. Anyway, the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice has an election integrity section. Harmeet Dillon, who was with America First Legal, is a friend of our movement. Lennar, she's a friend of us. And her deputy, Mac Warner, former Secretary of State of West Virginia, is a great friend of people like us. So we are going to take that lawsuit that you all contributed information through the canvas, that lawsuit and the evidence therein is going to the U.S. Department of Justice in the next little while, a few weeks, once they settle down who's doing what there.
Harmeet got confirmed.
She got confirmed, okay. So we were waiting to see that. We know Mac Warner is there already. So we will be bringing the evidence that we presented in state court to the feds, and they now are investigating compliance with federal law at the state level. This is a big deal. 3 things I'm going to talk about. 3 executive orders. One of them, the president, this is Foreign Adversary Information System and Communication System Technology Executive Order. President Trump wrote that order in May of 2019. That order became, Biden did not rescind it. It was not rescinded. Okay, go figure that one out. If you're a Q follower, you might figure that one out. It was not rescinded. The federal regulation was just finalized on February 5th, 2025. That executive order, which is 13873, and I'll give you the reference to this. You can go look it up. Basically says this: any information system or communication system or its supply chain that has a nexus that is somehow connected to a foreign adversary, if that system is part of national critical infrastructure, the Department of Commerce must review any transaction related to it and investigate whether or not that system poses a national security risk or a risk to American citizens. The system that the Secretary of State is looking at, ES&S, on their website lists, we use Chinese components. So this executive order, which is now in the Code of Federal Regulations, 15 CFR 791, I'll get that to you also, that requires the Department of Commerce to look at transactions involving foreign adversaries and critical infrastructure. The system that the Secretary of State would like to purchase is critical infrastructure, national, used in federal elections. So one of the moves that we have already begun is to request, invite, encourage the Department of Commerce to take a look at this potential transaction. We are the only state in the United States that is in the RFP process for a new voting system. So we think the Department of Commerce will be very interested in taking a peek at what Jeff Landry and Nancy Landry have up their sleeve. Secondly, the president on Monday did the press conference that you saw. You know you can save a lot of money. I was waiting for him to say $100 billion because he knows that number. The very next day, the president issued executive order, I don't have this one memorized, 14248, Executive Order 14248. This executive order is preserving and protecting the integrity of American elections. It instructs the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, the Election Assistance Commission, all of the key alphabet agencies to wait for it, audit the state election system for compliance with over 20 federal laws. Those of you that have been around for 4 years know that our initial ask of our Secretary of State, we want a forensic audit of Louisiana's election system. Do you remember that? It's now come to pass, thanks to our president. You can clap. So I encourage you, it's on whitehouse.gov, this executive order is on whitehouse.gov. I encourage you to read it. It's everything that we had hoped for. And it requires, within 180 days from March 25th, an audit by all the agencies looking at compliance with federal law. Guess what they're going to find? It ain't good, because we know what they're going to find. Okay? So that's happening right now. So they will come into Louisiana. I hope and I expect that they might do something like this based on the results of Elbert Guillory's race and on Brandon Trostler's race. They may say, hey, we want to take a look at the software. You follow me? The proprietary, patented, y'all can't see it software that counts on votes. So this is an explosive, potentially game-winning play that the president has done. Thirdly, the third executive order that is in draft form right now, this is public information. There's a draft of this one on the America Project, which is General Flynn and Patrick Byrne, the America Project. I'll give that to you. This is a national emergency executive order due to domestic and foreign interference in election systems. Let me say that again. A national security executive order due to domestic and foreign interference in American elections. What that order, if you read the draft, there are a couple of drafts out there. The one I recommend is the America Project draft. That executive order basically declares all digital election infrastructure. I made that up, by the way. That's not, no one uses that. Didn't think about it. Digital election infrastructure, DEI. Got it? These machines select people. These are DEI elected folks, selected folks, many of them.
I thought we just got rid of that. What? I thought we just got rid of DEI.
Yeah, we ain't done with it yet. We got to get the machine DEI out of here. So that executive order, we're hoping, expecting, praying that executive order will be issued sometime in the summer. Now think about the timing. The foreign adversary executive order is already active, in place. 180 days from March 25th, the federal agencies under Trump's leadership and Harmeet Dillon, civil rights, will be investigating and auditing state election systems for compliance with federal law. We know in the case of voter roll maintenance, they do not comply. They fought us in state court, sent 7 attorneys against us, 5 from Jeff Landry's office and 2 from Nancy Landry's office. They do not comply. That's the evidence we're sending to the Department of Justice. The third executive order is this emergency order, which will basically decertify for federal elections all digital election infrastructure. That's likely June, July, we hope, timeframe. So there is a lot happening from the federal level. At the state level, if you pull out your phone, Chrissy referred to a newspaper, and if you go to MAGALouisiana.org on your phone, you can see that newspaper, MAGA, capital M-A, capital M, capital A, capital G, capital A, Louisiana, capital L, other lowercase, .org, MAGALouisiana.org. It's a 4-page little newspaper. She mentioned the one we did on cleaning the voter rolls for Kyle Artland. This one, the basic theme is, Nancy, listen to President Trump. Nancy, listen to President Trump. So those newspapers we just learned driving down are going to be ready Friday. We have 10,000 copies. 1,000 will be mailed to every Republican official, elected official, appointed official in the state, direct. We're hoping that somehow we can get a couple of copies to the president. So if you see the newspaper, if he holds it up sometime, you'll know where that came from. He's prominently featured in the newspaper if you're looking at it. Scroll down and you'll see President Trump as Superman in the newspaper.
I like that.
You
If
see
anyone
it?
wants to help stuff envelopes or put stamps on, let us know, because we're gonna have a day where we do that, and we need a lot of hands. I forgot to say that.
So we also, various of us are working on legislation. I know Convention of States is working on legislation. LRA is working on legislation. John Scanlon, my partner in crime, are working on specific legislation that will help us move forward. So we're no longer on the learning side. We know how all this works. We know how the cheat happens. We're now on the solution side. One of the things that's in our favor, the mood has shifted in the country. The polling strongly suggests that 60+% of people, likely voters, now favor hand-marked, secure, serialized paper ballots that are counted in the precinct. It's what I'm calling a return to community-based elections. Bring the power back to the people in our communities, have Democrats and Republicans around the table counting our own votes. So what can we do? What can you do? Well, you know that we've done hand count demonstrations for like 3 years. We've been working on this since late 2021, perfecting different methods. We work with patriots from Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. I'm missing one. Missouri, Colorado, and here in Louisiana, we did some trials over these years. So what we can do is organize hand count demonstrations in your community. Gather people, we're going to teach you how to do it. Did y'all do a demo here? Y'all did one already. Yeah, so you know how to do it. So gather people, hopefully Democrats and Republicans. Remember, many of our Democrat brothers and sisters came over and voted with us for President Trump. To make a hand count a reality, we're going to need both Republican and Democrat volunteers who are trained to do the hand count. We're predicting that the pressure is going to be so great on many folks, like Nancy Landry, that we want to be there to help solve this problem. The president is not giving up on this. He did not go through everything that he has endured. The lawsuits, the fiery darts, the bullets, the accusations, the threats to his family. He didn't go through all that to leave us high and dry on elections, because as Christy said, if we fix elections, we fix everything. And you see him shifting now his priority to focus on elections. He is with us, and he's aware of what we're doing, and he's aware of what's going on. And so we're grateful for that. So with that, I'm done.
Okay, so we're going to enter into a question and answer period right now, so I'll ask you to repeat it and I'll bring the microphone to you. And then we're going to do a hand-marked paper ballot demonstration, and we'll have another Q&A after on that subject. So just kind of, if we can keep our questions to what we just covered with Andy and Chris.
I want to return to your original.
Okay, is that where it was?
It somehow ended up under my sleeve. Okay, Randy, I'll repeat my question. There was an interesting election in Wisconsin. Some people believe that some cheating occurred in the Supreme Court case. Do you foresee the Department of Justice intervening? And how likely are they to find something that may be prosecutorial?
So that's a great question about the Wisconsin election. We have very good contacts in Wisconsin that we have worked with on some projects like Act Blue, which you've heard about. We worked on that a year and a half ago, began working on that issue. So we pay careful attention to Wisconsin. Wisconsin looks like there was, how can I say this? It looks like it's clear that there's fraudulent activity going on there. That's very clear. And there are anomalies that look like algorithms operating in that election, as well as ballot dumps, ballot drops. So there's two things going on there. Some people believe that that may have been a setup, because when you're taking down a criminal enterprise, right, you set some things up to collect evidence. So that may be the case. It's being watched very closely, and I think that there's likely to be some law enforcement activity in Wisconsin on that particular election. The evidence is very clear.
If you have a question, raise your hand, please. Any other questions? Sherry.
So just because an executive order has been administered, what enforces it?
Just because an executive order has been issued, what is the enforcement? That's a great question. So the president directs the Attorney General, the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, etc. Those people report directly to him. So the enforcement is really at the direction of the president. Yesterday, I think yesterday, Abe Hamadeh, who you will recognize as the congressman from Arizona 8th District, he introduced legislation which takes the executive order line by line and puts it into federal law. And that's a House of Representative bill that mirrors the executive order. So our prayer and our hope is that not only do we get within 6 months the audit of the states for compliance with federal law, but that the Congress passes this bill, I don't know the number yet, that Abe Hamadeh is putting forward. There's also a bill by Pete Sessions of Texas that is similar to that bill. And I don't know which, probably Abe's bill is going to go forward, but that will put into law the requirements of the executive order, which include paper ballots and so on and so forth, everything that we want. So we cannot stop with just the EO. We have to go to legislation and get that passed. That will be a call to action for our Congress people. When that bill comes in, I'm sure we'll be all over it with calls to action, and we have to demand that that bill is passed, the Hamadeh bill. Did I answer your question?
Randy, with the proof that we have over and over, what is the holdup with our senators and our representatives not introducing legislation to move this forward from that avenue?
You're talking about at the federal level?
At the state level.
At the state level.
Our state,
You know,
state representatives, our state senators, why are they not moving? I mean, we've seen the proof. Why are they not moving to do some legislative action to correct this problem and get with the hand-marked secure paper ballots?
How do I want to be nice or not nice? I'm a pastor now, you don't have to be nice. What I used to tell Kyle Argument, and this will be my answer, is, and Christy's heard me tell this to Kyle Argument every time I met with him. Kyle, something's going to blow up outside of Louisiana. I don't know where or when. It could be Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona. It's going to blow up, trust me. And when it blows up, if you do not take action, you will look incompetent or corrupt or both. Well, folks, stuff is blowing up outside of Louisiana. Have you heard about USAID blowing up? Have you heard about Social Security blowing up? Our politicians can no longer avoid the reality that they face. The simple truth is, politicians are not leaders, they're followers. They're risk averse, they're politically aware. Mr. Giles and Ms. Whitney can speak to this more than me. This is what our politicians do. Right?
You got to put your head in between your legs and stick it in.
Yeah. I'm a pastor, sorry, I can't repeat that to it. It's
I apologize.
So what we're seeing, Bud, is the president, you saw him. Okay, that was a direct communication to Governor Jeff Landry. He stopped short of saying, Jeff, don't do it. Don't do it. And if Jeff Landry and Nancy Landry and Liz Muriel proceed with this, President Trump, he warns people. If you've noticed, he warns them once, he warns them twice, and if you're disloyal to this president, I would not want to be in those shoes. I believe right now there is a political recalibration going on. That the Jeff Landry brand is very damaged, in my opinion, because of many hard to understand moves. Giving away a congressional seat. How'd that happen? Not getting real close primaries. How'd that happen? Not fulfilling the promise of eliminating over time the state income tax. How'd that happen? Trial lawyers, no tort reform. And we could go on. So I think there's a recalibration going on. I won't call his brand toxic, but I have a PhD in marketing. Politics is marketing. Y'all, you know more about this than me. I think his brand is, when you get on the wrong side of Donald Trump, your brand ain't gonna be too good if you're in a state like Louisiana.
He's already got explained.
That's explained in the.
He's got explained to do.
Randy, thank you and Chris for coming down to the presentation. I was fortunate enough to be on the Republican State Senate Committee and vote for Christie's resolution. And I just think it's important that we realize, and I want to ask for some input from you about how do we make a difference? In other words, 50% of the people in that room, Republicans, didn't get it, that we needed paper ballots. I think some of them were confused with paper components. I think there were others that didn't think we even needed an audit, or they thought we were auditing the whole time. And I wanted to get your input.
You have to realize that ever since hanging chads, there has been an election industrial complex funded by USAID money around the world and in this country. Almost all the training that our election officials get, clerks, registrars, their people, and others in state government, is run by the vendors. The vendors do it. And the Harvard Belfer Center is another place that training comes out. Their talking points are the same around the country. We know because we talk to people. And so they have the same talking points. It'll take too long. It's not accurate. We can't get volunteers, et cetera, et cetera.
There's so many people who believe that.
We can't tell them we gotta show them, Blaze, and that's what the hand count demo is. And you wanna scare the rhinos? Go talk to your Democratic friends that I know you got that are Trump supporters, and put them around the table counting votes and let people see that.
Hey, Dr. Russ, what's the definition of a MINO?
Oh, minnow, that's another word that I coined. A minnow, you've heard of rhinos, there's minnows, MAGA in name only. These are small, smelly little fish, and they're fishy. And minnows, MAGA in name only. Other questions?
Okay, this will be our last question on this subject.
Last
and we'll move
question.
on.
Dr. Russ, last week, I think, or at least in the last 2 weeks, President Trump made a very interesting statement about the fact that he was declassing the Crossfire hurricane records, and there was proof of the 2020 election fraud in the Crossfire hurricane files. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Crossfire Hurricane, Peter Strzok and all of that stuff. If y'all follow things, they try to take President Trump down with that whole thing that emanated out of the FBI and the intelligence community. The executive order that we expect this summer is going to be predicated on domestic and foreign interference in U.S. elections. Crossfire Hurricane, and the reason why it's so important, is domestic interference in American elections. Internationally, there's some connections to it too. If you followed it, you know that the British MI5 was in on that, and there's all kinds of, the Australian folks are in on the group of five. Were involved in that. So that's why that release is so important, is it will lead to connections both domestically and foreign, which is why this emergency executive order we think is forthcoming. What a pitch count sheet is, pitch count sheet?
Yes.
We were in John Scanlon's garage working on this, trying different things out, and somebody came up with an idea. Counting votes is like counting pitches. So we took a pitch count sheet and adapted it to count votes, okay? So this is basically, y'all can all boo when I say this candidate's name. Joseph R. Biden, candidate 1. So if I'm a counter, there's a caller, so we have 2 callers on one side of the table. The callers, one of them calls the race, the vote. The other one makes sure, this is one Republican and one Dem. So I'm going to be the Republican caller. Number 1, my Democratic friend is watching me call it, right? Keeping me honest. We have 2 counters on the other side of the table. The counters take a proprietary patented, I'm going to show it to you in a minute. It's in the black box over there. And y'all can't tell anybody about it because I'll have to kill you. You take what's in that black box and you bubble in number 1. Okay? Candidate 1 got their first vote. Then number 2, we got one for Donald Trump. Cheer for that. Okay. Now, John Scanlon and I are businessmen, and we know our competitors have black box software, right? Y'all know that. proprietary patented black box software. So we too have a patented proprietary black box because we got to sell this to our election officials, right? So I am going to disclose to you tonight, for the very first time in the history of the world, the most sophisticated, non-digital election infrastructure that you will ever see. And it's doubtful that y'all can even understand this.
The pencil marker.
How does that work? How does that work?
Okay. I'll see you after. You need some help, so I'll see you after.
He thought it would be black.
Okay, you know we're competing against hardware and software, right? The tip of this is soft, and many of the people that will be counting the votes have hard heads. Hardware and software. So you simply, when the caller calls the number one, you go, oop, number one. And then you go down the ballot. Okay? Number 4, this race, number 4, go over to 4, okay? Candidate 4, which is Edwards. So we're going to demonstrate quickly, but you have the idea, right? Very simple. So I want 4 volunteers, those of you that I paid to do this now, I'm just kidding. 4 volunteers to come up, and we're going to count a couple of ballots.
Come on, Ben, walk
just so you can see how this works. Going into the process is just like what we do now. You go into the poll, you sign, you show your ID, you sign the poll book. We also advocate day of voting, right? Only one day voting with limited absentee and possibly a day or two of early. That's still up for debate. My preference is one day voting for federal elections, national holiday. That way you have a lot of volunteers. So we have sorry David, a Democrat. He's got his convention of states back. That was a low vote. We have a Democrat and a Republican selected by the parish party, trained and certified, signed off by the clerk, that they have gone through training to do this. We have a Democrat, sorry. Are you a Democrat?
No, but he's with Convention of States.
Oh, okay, so I'm picking on you. Yeah. And I need, so I'll be the other counter here. So I'm going to narrate. So David is going to call the first picture color, pink, and I'm going to be yellow. Okay, you're watching him. Okay, you're a Republican. He's a skeevy Democrat. And you have to make sure that when he calls the number, that he has called the correct number on it. You're not going to call the name of the candidate, just the number. Okay, go ahead.
2.
Candidate 2. Candidate 2, okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to go to candidates, and do right there. There you go. Okay.
Do you want me to read the name?
No, don't read the name. Just the number of who the voter selected. Just the number.
5.
5.
8. 10.
10.
14. 19.
Okay, we don't have the ballot going that long, okay? So go to the next ballot.
1. 5. 7. 12. 15. 18.
We don't have a sheet. Our sheet is attenuated at 16, but you get the idea. That's what we're trying to show you. And let's do one more ballot, and then we'll see how our totals match.
1. 6. 7. 11. 16. That's where.
Okay. All right, so I want my friend here, Mr. Price, check to see how accurate we were. %. Hey, now we only did a little sample, right? So these count sheets, you don't have to add them up. The bubbles have numbers in them. And so there's no adding here. There's self-adding, which makes it efficient. So counting can begin during the day, such that, so let's say if the precinct has 750 voters, which is an average Louisiana precinct, 50% turnout, we have 375 ballots to count. The counting team can show up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The ballots are in groups of 25 or 50 batches. 25 ballots or 50 batches. The counting team does what we've just done. And by 8 o'clock, guess how many ballots they have to count? Just what came in at the end. So in 4 hours, we can easily count with 4 people the average Louisiana precinct with 100% accuracy. And the exciting thing about this is we return elections to the community where they belong. And Democrats and Republicans gather around the counting table, and guess who certifies these elections? Them. Their names, registered voters in the precinct, certify and write their names. So the other part, the other feature of this is what we hope to achieve, not in this legislative session, but in the future, no parish reports until all parishes are complete. Y'all know the Orleans Parish Shuffle.
Yep.
Always the last one, and we had the 40,000 JBE, right? We believe very strongly that the law needs to say no one reports until everyone reports, and those reports have to be turned in on election night. A couple of nuances here. We've already tested in May of 2022 a technology assist. What that means is every ballot would have a serial number, a serialized feature to it, and some security features on the paper, watermarks and things of that nature. The serialized numbers would be assigned to a particular precinct, a set of numbers. Are y'all following me? Yeah. Set of pre-approved printed ballots by serial number. The front end of the election goes as planned, then they're counted, they're brought in chain of custody to the clerk of court, they're scanned in. The scanner does two things. It verifies the serial number against the approved database, so you can't copy and pull them out from under here. Y'all seen that video? That goes away. Also, those ballots, because they're scanned, those images go up on the internet. Anyone for free can recount the election. We know it works because we did it in the summer of 2022.
You mean you don't have to give Dominion $140,000
No.
to recount that parish?
No.
It's going to be free?
It's going to be free.
Man!
You were there. You saw us do this.
I love a free thing, man. That's free.
So in addition to that, there will be what we recommend is a CD-ROM of those images. Permanent, cannot be written over. So the CD-ROM and the paper ballots become the record of that election. If there's ever any question, we go back to the precinct, we talk to our 2 Democratic Convention of States members and our 2 esteemed Republicans, and they can tell us, yeah, that's my signature. I was there, and you could even have a camera over it. You know, we don't know if that's necessary. So that's what we have to do with our elected representatives. I don't like the word official. They're not officials. They're our representatives. We have to show them respectfully how this works. And so we're hoping with the president's support, as you just heard, that they will be more interested in coming to see. And it's critical that we invite our Democratic friends to participate with us, because once they see it, they can't unsee it.